And welcome to Today in the News on Vanguard Life. I am Precious Chukudi. We begin with the front pages of the papers this morning, starting off with Vanguard. Vanguard is leading with our weapons against insecurity, and that's coming from service chiefs. The writer says, CDS, he says, I will prioritize troop welfare, deepen interagency collaboration, make armed forces people-centric. Nigerian Army most misunderstood, says the COA recommends establishment of Defense Space Force to tackle cybercrime. We can see a photo story showing the service chiefs at reps screening. And page 27, APC crisis. Tinubu shops for Adamu successor. The writer says APC accounts frozen. NWC confirms ex-Nasarawa governors exit Omishore 2. Bars Omishore from NWC meeting. Adamu absent, postpones National Caucus neck meeting. Stories above, we have Army intercepts truckload of ammunition in Southeast. FRSC can only operate on federal roads. That's coming from appeal courts. EMEFIELE lawyers initiate contempt case against DSS DG Bichi. Deregulation, marketers begin for importation. That's coming from NMDPRA. And stories above that naira depreciation, subsidy removal push inflation to 22.79%. And the National Assembly Committee lawmakers scramble for Tinubu Gbaja's endorsement. And lastly, on the front page of the Vanguard newspaper, federal government moves to evacuate overtime cargoes from ports. Now let's take a look at the Nation newspaper. The Nation is leading with APC top positions. Why Adamu Mishori lost out. The writer says lack of accountability, poor leadership allegations, cause of resignation. Kiari Huanta takes over in acting capacity. Almakura Kekemeke may be replacement. INEC Tinubu Abuja resident not superior to other Nigerians. And writer says the PDP LP lied on electronic result collation. Stories above. We have database of 50 million poor Nigerians, says agency. How the $800 million will be transferred to beneficiaries. President greets a celebrated columnist Olatunji Dari at 79. All right, let's take a look at the Guardian newspaper. The Guardian is leading with Nigeria spend over 99% revenue to service debts as inflation bites harder. Sit at home, businesses, school open in Enugu as Mba vows to seal locked businesses. APC chieftain explains why Adamu was removed as progressive takeover. Fresh concerns over cancerous sweetener in food, beverages. Nigeria confirms the first anthrax case among animals in Suleja. Amcon malls liquidation returns to shareholder option for embattled Arik Air. Stories above. PDP LP knock APC over alleged plot to intimidate a PEPC. All right, let's take a look at the Punch newspaper. The Punch is leading with audit report nails Adamu Mishori as a Tinubu governor shop for new chair. The writer says aggrieved NWC members welcome Adamu's removal. Next meeting postponed indefinitely. Kiari Funtua takes a temporary charge. New leaders to emerge as at emergency convention. You can also see a photo story showing army intercept Anambra bound truck with ammunition. Poultry farms shutting down over high maize price. That's coming from Pan. Lover prophet to die by hanging for killing Lasso undergraduate. You can read that story on pages 4 and 5. Suspended EFCC chair spent 33 days in custody. Stories above. Federal government grants 56 import licenses as fuel consumption drops. Anthrax, government plans nationwide animal vaccination. You can see on page 9. On page 9 still, politicians flooding government house distracting me. And that's coming from the Akwa Ibom governor. And that's how we can take on the front pages of the papers. Join us after the break. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. If you're just joining still today in the news on Vanguard Live, I am Precious Chukudi. Joining me to talk about some of the stories on the front pages of the papers this morning is Mr. Dayo Akintobi, publisher of Ilupeju today, Ikeja today, and Lagos today. He joins us via Zoom today. Good morning, Mr. Dayo. It's good to have you join us this morning.
Good morning, Precious. Good morning to all our viewers.
Yeah. All right. Let's delve in, and of course, we're talking about the service chiefs. Now, the chief of defense staff, Christopher Musa, has said that his leadership concept will be built on being people-centric, prioritizing troops' welfare, and deepening jointness and interagency collaboration. Just as the chief of army staff, Lagbaja, said that the Nigerian army remains the most misunderstood, complex, and challenged component of the Nigerian armed force. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's interesting. I think the new service chiefs are trying to find different ways to address the insecurity problem in Nigeria from what their predecessors have done. So they're trying to come up with innovative concepts that can probably arrest the insecurity situation in light of the fact that this has been a problem for a very long time, and very many different solutions have been proffered and ideas have been put forward, and none of them have been very effective. I like that one about troop welfare. I think that's very important to boost the morale of the force. You can't send people out to go and risk their lives for the country, to go and take big risks to their future, to the welfare of their family, and they're not sufficiently motivated. They're living conditions, even just their death benefits, in case they die in active duty, their families are not really secure in the knowledge that they'll be taken care of, that there's a death benefit or a pension or something that will hold them together after losing their breadwinner. So I think troop morale is important, taking care of troop welfare, giving them very good benefits. Then there's also the thing about interagency cooperation. The way of the world today requires a lot more intelligence sharing. It requires more softer approaches than just firepower, armament, munitions all the time. Now you have to fight smart, not fight so strong as such. And interagency collaboration, where they share information, they share intelligence, those kind of things will make them more formidable in their approach to combating insecurity. What I heard from all the service chiefs basically at this screening, they were speaking while they were being screened by the National Assembly. And what I'm hearing coming from the new service chiefs is a breath of fresh air. They're all proffering new ideas. And you know that old saying that, you can't keep doing the same thing the same way all the time and expect a different result. And they've seen how their predecessors went about it, and they can tell that the results were not to the best of possibility. So they are now coming up with fresh ideas. The Chief of Army Staff made mention of the fact that the Army is most misunderstood. What he was saying by that is that a lot of people malign the Army and say, you're supposed to be so strong and so formidable. How can a ragtag bunch of misfits called bandits or kidnappers or terrorists, how can they have outmaneuvered you for the last several years to where you haven't been able to put them down? That is the general Nigerian perception, is that the Army has been lacking or is slacking in this war, and the Army should have been able to. This is the same Army that went to Sierra Leone for peacekeeping, went to different places, and have always done us proud in different places. So why in Nigeria is it a problem for them to put down an insurrection? So the public perception of the Army is not at its highest at the moment. And that's what the Chief of Army Staff is saying, is that it's actually a wrong perception, that the Army is professional, they are efficient, they are highly trained, they are motivated, and it just requires better communication with the public to make the public appreciate the efforts of the Army. And because the insurrection has so far continued to rear its ugly head, that is not due to a lack or a failure or underperformance by the Army. That's what the Chief of Army Staff is trying to say.
All right, let's move ahead and talk about APC crisis and the resignation of Adamu. And we also hear that the president is is actively shopping for his replacement. And we also heard that some party leaders were going around, with lists of alleged sins committed by, Adamu against the president. What's your take on the general situation?
It's all politics, really. I mean, if you look at it, I don't think since 1999 there's been any party chairman, whether PDP, whether APC, whoever completed his tenure. Something always happens. They always get embroiled in scandal. They always get pushed out of office. And why is that? Well, think about it. Adamu was brought in by President Buhari, and truth be told, I didn't see him really supporting President Tinubu in the run-up to the election. There are many various instances. I mean, if you remember, during the primaries, he was the one who spoke up and said Ahmad Lawan was the choice of the party. There have been so many other instances where he has gone against the grain of what President Tinubu was aspiring to do. And even now that President Tinubu is in office, he's also made one or two moves that basically have shown that he's not in support of the president. So it's not a surprise that the president probably pulled strings within the party to make sure that they sideline this guy, and he will now make sure that it is somebody of his own choosing that is now at the helm of affairs of the APC. Of course, they've used a red herring, which is the issue of the 32 billion naira that was collected during the primaries, collected from sale of nomination forms. And they've asked him to account for that money. They say there's only like 7 billion in the party's accounts, and they've called in an auditor who has done a report and has found Adamu wanting. Adamu and his deputy Omishore, they've said there was some misappropriation of funds that they've not been able to explain. So they are using that ostensibly as a reason to push him out. But it's much deeper than that. There's a lot more politics involved. And the bottom line is that the president wants and needs to have his own preferred candidate at the helm of the party who will toe his line and make sure that the party is in sync with the president in terms of his agenda. So that's what's at play here.
All right, let's move ahead and talk about this one, and that's about former governor of the central bank, EMEFIELE. Now, according to reports, a group of human rights lawyers have initiated contempt action against the DG of the DSS, Bichi, over the prolonged detention of EMEFIELE despite court orders. Looking at the situation, some people are thinking that maybe the former suspended central bank governor might be witch hunted. What do you think about it?
Well, the thing about it is that Governor EMEFIELE's people, his legal team, have gone to court and have been able to get court orders that say charge him or release him. He's been held now for well over a month. They've not formally charged him with any offenses relating to his office as the CBN governor. In the recent past, the last few days, they brought some charges against him that they found some guns with him and they found some ammunition to those guns. Well, whether the guns are licensed to him or not, we don't know. But so far, those are the only charges. And as far as I know, those charges are available. So this is the issue, is that it looks like his human rights are being violated. You've not charged him for corruption or for any offenses. I mean, they talked about he was funding terrorism. They talked about he tried to run for president and probably used their public funds to fund his campaign. There are so many allegations against him. They said this issue of arbitrage in foreign exchange, the official rate and the black market rate, he was profiting from it and he was giving licenses to his cronies. So there are many allegations against him which so far have not been proven. But the point that the human rights people are saying is charge him or leave him. You can't hold him in limbo. The Constitution does not allow that, does not permit that. And there's a court order saying charge him or release him, and they've not done either one. The charges they brought against him are relatively minor at this point, and those charges are available. So there's a sense of the fact that he's being witch hunted. But that's not to say that EMEFIELE himself is without sin, because even just attempting to run for president while being in office does not pass the smell test at all. He shouldn't have even been involved in that at all. So clearly there are some untoward things that can be attributed to him and his tenure in office. But there's a right way and a proper way to go about a judicial process. In fact, if the DSS overreaches itself by denying him his constitutional, legal, and human rights, that could even scuttle their case against him to begin with. So I look at it, it's the same thing with the FCC chairman, who's also been in custody for about a month now, that has not been charged. He's also under the custody of the DSS. So you ask yourself sometimes, is the DSS being used as a political tool? Because it seems like once it trains its PDIs on you, at that point, it suspends all rights that you may have, which makes it look like is this a witch hunt for real. If they are sure of themselves and they are confident of the fact that they have a case, then they should charge him and take him to court and let the trial ensue and let the truth be discovered. I don't think it's proper to use underhanded tactics to keep a person incarcerated. This is impunity because the court has said do the needful. So that is why they said we will sue the DSS for contempt of court and say that you are not obeying a court order. And we're a nation of laws. We're a nation of respect for the law. And it behooves the DSS as a government agency to toe the line of propriety. So I understand perfectly why a lot of people are aggrieved that I mean, yeah, at the end of the day, there are a lot of people that think EMEFIELE did a lot of wrong. But I believe the average Nigerian wants to see him go through a proper judicial process and not be railroaded into submission or railroaded into prison simply because he's probably on the other side of the current political leadership. Remember, EMEFIELE was not appointed by the current administration, and it could also look like it. Remember that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, when he was running as a candidate, accused the central bank openly that the Naira redesign policy was targeted to scuttle his presidential bid. That EMEFIELE and whoever his backers were did that intentionally to scuttle his presidential bid. So that his president is this revenge for EMEFIELE supposedly trying to scuttle his ambition. Time will tell, we will see. But I think the authorities should always follow due process in whatever they do.
All right, let's touch on this 8,000 naira for 12 million household. And of course, even the informal sector has come out to say that the money is extremely small. And also some of the fielding questions are, how does the government intend to identify the poor and low income household, of which the agency in charge has come out to say that they have the database of 15 million poor people living in Nigeria. How do you respond?
Well, how did they come up with that list is the question. Did they ask people to register? If they did, how come we didn't hear about it? The poorest of the poor in Nigeria live in the rural and riverine areas where there's even no communication. So even if they put out a notice, come and register, how would those people get to do it? So there is a bit of suspicion and questionability about how they came up with those 15 million names. Also, how do you disburse to 15 million people who are not connected with telecommunications? They don't have bank accounts. They say we'll give them mobile wallets, but to put the money in a mobile wallet, because what they're saying now is we're not handing out cash. We are doing digital transfer. So for that, you got to have a bank account or a digital wallet. And they're saying, how do people who don't even have mobile phones? How will they have digital wallets or bank accounts? So there's still some murkiness in terms of, and naturally there's a trust deficit. Now, average Nigerian doesn't trust government. So they all see this a way that they want to chop more money again, and this 800 million is going to go down a hole, or to go to political cronies and families of those who are politically connected. So there's a lot of doubt about the veracity of the program. There's a lot of doubt about how it's going to be implemented. Then there's the other side that says, why should you borrow for consumption? Because the $800 million is borrowed, it's got to be paid back. It's not a grant. So they're saying you borrow for things that will yield back the loan. What is it borrowing for consumption? And so if we're going to borrow this money, why don't we use it to fix the refineries? Why don't we use it to fix? Because there are three areas that are plaguing the poorest of the poor in Nigeria: energy, transportation, and food. Good. President Tinubu declared a state of emergency on food because inflation is at its highest. I think last count yesterday was 23 point something percent. It's the highest we've ever seen. So food is super expensive. How can the poor feed themselves? So how do we allocate resources now to shore up those three areas? They're talking about transportation. They're trying to import buses. They're trying to convert to gas. They're doing convert vehicles from internal combustion engines that require petrol to now run on auto gas. So these are some good interventions that we're looking at. Energy, for example, look, the discourse yesterday applied to the National Electricity Regulatory Commission to increase tariff. We're going to be paying more for electricity at a time when we're paying more for fuel. That's coming. This is a problem for poor Nigerians. This is a problem for middle-class Nigerians. So you're giving out 8,000 to the poorest of the poor. We're not sure that it's actually going to go to the poorest of the poor. And even if it does, whoever it does go to, how effective is 8,000 naira? I was told that in villages, 8,000 naira is a lot of money. It can feed you for a month. But this program is for 6 months. So after you fed, giving 8,000 naira for 6 months, what next? After that 6 months, will all those poor people suddenly be rich? After 6 months, you pull the plug on the 8,000 naira. What is their fate? They go back to status quo. So how have you really helped? Remember that saying, give a man a fish, feed him for a day, teach him how to fish, feed him for life. This 6 month, 8,000 naira is just giving a man a fish to feed him for a day. It's not helping his situation. 6 months will go in a flash like that. Then where does that leave us? We're back to energy, food, and transportation problem. So that is what the government should look at, I think. Things like fixing the refineries so that cost of fuel can come down. Things like improving infrastructure, electricity, so that cost of energy can come down. Things like supporting agriculture, so that not just temporary knee-jerk shot in the arm, things that will go away after a short while. We'll be right back to where we started.
And we just got this information that NMPCL has increased the petrol pump price to 617 naira, and that's in Abuja from the 537 naira that it was before. Although we've not gotten any form of response as to the reason why the increase has occurred, but we can actually see how deep the hardship is on Nigerians. What can you say about that?
Well, the truth of it is when deregulation occurs and you deregulate the industry, the price will fluctuate subject to the vagaries of the oil market. So it'll go down sometimes, it'll go up sometimes. And at this point in time, the war in Ukraine versus Ukraine and Russia is putting pressure on oil supplies. So it's getting more expensive. The price of a barrel of oil is going up, which really should be a blessing for Nigeria in terms of that we earn more revenue. But it also translates to increase in the pump price. Here we are already talking about food is expensive, transportation is expensive. So if we go up higher, cost of food will increase, which already we said inflation is at an all-time high. So now pressure will be on employers. We have to all find a way to do something for employees because they won't be able to get to work if they can't pay for transportation, and it just gets worse and worse and more pressure from all aspects. And the economy it'll put the economy in a tailspin and there'll be some chaos. So government needs to really think this through properly. And yes, we all agree that fuel subsidy needed to be removed, but there might have been a better way to do it where the fallout wouldn't have been so devastating on the pockets of the average Nigerian.
All right, let's take a look at Mr. and Mrs. before we go. And Mr. is speaking, says, henceforth, I want to live like my ancestors. African food, African clothes, African medicine, African music, etc. And Mrs. says, so after all the African games, what next?
Like I just asked, what next after 6 months of 8,000 naira? Well, for Mister, what's next after all that is to take a second wife because that's the African way. So, so maybe Mrs. should be careful about asking those kind of questions because the African way, the way our fathers and our ancestors used to do, was they practice polygamy until the colonialists came and told us that was wrong. So Mrs. should take her time, otherwise she just find that she has a junior wife in the house one of these days.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Daya Akintobi, publisher of the Page Today, Kejo Today, and Lekki Today. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us on the show.
My pleasure always. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, also remember that you can equally like, share, and subscribe on all our social media platforms showing on your screen. To find out today's stories, go to our website www.vanguardndia.com to find out more. I am Precious